My hands were shaking so hard I nearly dropped the box they forced into my arms, cardboard biting into my palms as I clung to what little was left of 16 years. Connor didn't even meet my eyes, his silence a louder betrayal than any curse while the cold, hollow thud of the dealership door slamming shut behind me echoed through the empty lot where my life used to be. I remember the way my dad's hands always looked scarred, grease-stained, callous, but steady as they gripped the steering wheel of whatever beat-up Tradin we happened to be driving that day. He'd fix his eyes on me through the mirror and say, "Son, people don't buy cars, they buy you. You treat him right, you'll eat. If you don't, you'll be eating alone." I guess he meant it as advice. But to me, those words landed like a promise. It didn't matter how small the dealership was back then, just a patch of gravel, some bleached trailer for an office, and a lonely row of cars in every shape and shade of disappointment. Mom would sit behind her ancient desk, hair pinned back and always a pencil stuck behind her ear, keeping the chaos in check, one scribbled receipt at a time. I must have been 7 the first time Dad tossed me a rag and told me to make her shine, as if getting fingerprints off a Ford would get us any closer to making rent that month. But I did it anyway, because that's just what you did if you wanted to see Dad smile. I came up on blacktop and hope, not textbooks, summer nights, freezing winters, and the smell of burnt coffee in the air. I'd watched Dad close a deal with nothing but honesty, a handshake thick with expectation. Every customer's life became a story I knew by heart. The young couple buying their first car, Shirley dropping off cookies and buying a new truck for her husband's birthday, Joe handing out cigars after his daughter's graduation. The names and faces blurred into something bigger. The business was never just a business. It was our backbone, our whole identity stitched into every sale. But Connor always stood just outside the ring, 4 years younger, sharper dressed, somehow cleaner than the rest of us. Even as a kid, he rarely got grease under his nails, never seemed to care if Shirley remembered his name or if Joe's cigar smoke lingered sweet in the showroom. When Dad talked about heart, Connor talked about margins, efficiency, and process improvement, like he was already gearing up for corporate boardrooms far from the smell of oil and asphalt. I'd catch him watching me polish windshields, a tight little smirk curling at the edge of his mouth, like he knew something I didn't. The summer before Connor left for college, Dad and I rebuilt the red Mustang out back a rattletrap from auction, coughing thick plumes of white smoke. We'd work by the pale glow of a dangling shop light, arms slick with sweat and engine grease, him talking me through every bolt and gasket while the rest of the city slept. That car was a labor of hope, of us refusing to let good things go to rust. One night, after the engine finally roared to life, Dad gave me a look I'll never shake, a mixture of pride and warning. "This is what we do, Ben. We fix what others throw away." Sometimes I wonder if he meant me, too. By the time Connor came back with his business degree and big city ideas, the dealership felt different. Colder, somehow. The old photographs came down, Dad's regulars started fading away. Still, I kept clinging to what I was taught: treat every deal like it was your name on the line. Maybe I was too stubborn, too set in my ways, but I kept believing there was honor in that. Even as I watched Connor turning numbers on his laptop, cold-eyed during meetings, never once glancing up to see if anyone remembered Shirley from accounting or cared why Joe has stopped coming by. I kept my head down. 16 years. 16 birthdays, summer barbecues in the lot, first dances with my daughter in the service bay, grease-stained hands clasped around mugs of burnt coffee every opening morning. All of it proof that what Dad built was real, that with a little grit and decency, you could hold something together, no matter how many blacktop cracks tried to split it apart. Looking back, I guess I never really saw the cracks in Connor's smile until it was too late. I wanted to believe we were still on the same team. That family meant the same thing to both of us. But if there is one thing 16 years of wiping windshields and shaking hands taught me, not everyone's built to fix what's broken. Some people look at a legacy and see just another thing to trade in, no matter whose name's still painted on the sign outside. I barely recognized the place anymore. What used to be a service bay filled with the scent of old oil and laughter was now floored in soulless grey tile, walls bland as hospital sheets. Connor said it was a modern branding. I called it a funeral for the past. My dad's gold let it sign a quiet promise to everyone who wandered in, hung lopsided above a flat screen that leaped luxury car ads nobody in our part of Sacramento could ever afford. My new office was a windowless, glorified broom closet between the bathroom and the break room, just big enough for a work desk and a chair that wobbled. I tried to cover the chemical stench with coffee grounds from Mom's old tin, but even that didn't touch the chill crawling into my bones. Still, every morning, I got in early. I wiped down the glass on the front doors, fussed with the paperwork Mom would have had color-coded, and checked in with the tick skies I'd watched grow from rookie lot boys to fathers with tired smiles. I did it because that was how we survived, by giving a damn, even when it didn't matter. But nothing mattered to Connor unless it made a craft move. He'd swept in with his new hires, slick talkers in tight suits, all smiles and performance metrics, their eyes sliding past me like I wasn't even there. It was his dealership now, after all. Dad's notes and rules, the framed photos of first sales and Christmas parties, even the oil-stained clipboard that was practically a family tree gone. Ship streamlined, soulless. I tried to hold on. I tried to believe I still belonged. Maybe Connor would settle, maybe he'd remember why this place mattered. But all I got were cold shoulders in Monday meetings and fake sweet CCs on emails, the same faces I'd watched open boxes of donuts at 6 am now taking their leads from my baby brother, the kid who smirked at dirty hands. The tension started as a whisper in the break room, folks talking in tight circles around burnt coffee too quiet when I stepped in. Even Shirley, who'd baked pies for my daughter's birthday, stopped meeting my eyes. I knew what was coming. I'd heard Connor on the phone, his voice silky, calculated, talking about taking us into the future, cutting old loyalties. I knew what those words meant. Old loyalties meant me. Then out of the blue, Titan Motors regional rep Finsacola, a guy who remembered Dad's stories and my daughter's graduation, caught me after hours outside the garage. He glanced around, careful no one watch, and handed me a Titan letterhead. "Ben," he said, keeping his voice low, "you know Connor's been poking around our competition. We'd rather deal with someone who's got roots here. My boss wants to put you in charge of regional distribution. You'll control every Titan unit coming into the county, not just for Callahan Auto, for all of them." Might get twisted. Betraying my own blood wasn't in my wiring, but Connor was already tossing matches into the gas can. I stared at Vince's offer until midnight, thumb tracing the signature line. I thought about Dad's words, "Have you always said people buy you?" I thought about every goodbye I'd withered in that dealership for 16 years, friends, family, even dreams, all rolling out of the lot at dusk. I signed the deal the next morning. My hand shook, stomach in knots. It wasn't pride that pushed me, call it desperation or self-preservation, maybe just the last flicker of hope that something of my father's could be rescued. A week later, the cracks in the facade split wide open. I came in on a Thursday, expecting nothing but routine, and found the locks changed. Connor met me at the door, eyes stone cold, a security guard beside him out of some cheap thriller. He barely even looked at me. "Company restructuring, your services are no longer required," he said, voice too smooth. "Ben, it's just business. Let's not make this harder than it has to be. That's all." 16 years, reduced to a memo and a nod. I grabbed my box-framed photo of Dad by the Mustang, a rag still stained with old oil, my daughter's crayon drawings, and walked out onto the steaming pavement. As I stood by the curb, cardboard digging into my palms, I watched Connor disappear into the glass doors, suit crisp and hair neat, not a single speck of dust on him. I wondered if he'd even noticed the hole he just put through the heart of our family. But what he didn't know, what he couldn't possibly understand, was just how deep the roots of this place ran through me. Because for the first time in my life, I held something sharp enough to cut back. Every car his new team ordered, every truck he needed to fill that shiny empty showroom, now passed through my hands first. For once, all Connor's shiny plans and process improvements couldn't fix what he'd broken. And standing there, dust and sweat and heartbreak stinging my eyes, I made a vow to myself, to Dad, to the old ghost that wandered the lot after hours. He wanted to run a business. Now he'd have to do it without a brother's hand holding up the roof. 3 days into my new life, I woke up with a pit in my stomach, the kind that comes from years of holding your breath, waiting for the ground to drop out beneath you. My phone was already buzzing before sunrise. Vanessa from accounting, her voice frantic, trying to sound professional through tears. "Ben, the inventory numbers won't process, showroom's empty, suppliers keep saying distribution hold, Connor's losing it, blaming the computers or me or I don't know, did you hear anything?" I nearly laughed sharp bitter. Yeah, I'd heard. Every vehicle destined for Callahan Auto now rested on my signature, my calendar, my yes but no, every SUV, every plain old sedan waiting for a curious family or a tired single mom to pull it off the lot. Maybe Vanessa thought I'd fix it. She didn't know about the contract, didn't know how fast loyalty curdles in the wrong hands. Then my phone lit up again. Connor's number. I stared at it, thumb hovering. His name, just Connor, no emoji, nothing, like we'd never been more than numbers saved in each other's phones out of habit. I answered anyway. Habit again. His voice hit me before the call connected, low, control, but teetering on the edge. "Ben, tell me you didn't do this. Tell me these trucks stuck in storage were getting stonewalled because of some new system Titan cooked up, right? Tell me you didn't have anything to do with this." I closed my eyes and pictured the old service bay Dad's grease-stained hands clapping me on the shoulder, saying, "If you want it to last, you build it with your own sweat, not someone else's shortcuts." I missed the ache in my joints after double shifts, the way guys used to rate me for still using paper locks when everyone else had gone digital. But I was angry too, the kind of anger that chews up your stomach and leaves your hand shaking. Connor's voice came through again, louder. "Ben, you can't just block us out. This is my business now. I'm running it better than Dad ever did. Don't sabotage me just because you can't handle change." My knuckles whitened on the phone. "You think this is about me being left out? You think I wanted any of this?" He scoffed. "Cut the martyr act. You signed that deal with Titan behind my back. You lined this up." I lined it up. I cut in, my voice rough, like gravel. "After you spent weeks planning to toss me aside, company restructuring, that's what you called it. Right, I heard you talking to those guys from Novacar trying to dump Titan for a quick buck. You weren't just going to fire me, Connor. You were going to sell off everything Dad worked for, every promise, every handshake, just to make this place look good on some balance sheet. There was a long silence on the line, the kind that sucks the air out of a room. My breath hitched just a little. Even now, part of me wanted him to argue, to defend himself. To say, "I'm sorry, Ben." Instead, I heard a chair slam backwards onto aisle, mumbling, something thrown against the wall. Then lower, just above a whisper, "Let it go. Just let me get the cars. Help me, Ben, please. At least do that." My heart twisted. I remembered us as kids, Connor racing around the used Chevy, scuffed sneakers skidding on hot blacktop, always looking over his shoulder to see if I was watching, if he was doing it right. I clung to that memory, hoping for it to bleed through into this moment. But I saw Dad again, standing by the bay doors at dusk, voice trembling after a tough week. Blood means you fight for each other, but if a man decides to burn it all down, sometimes you gotta let him learn what cold really feels like. Connor's plea rattled the back of my teeth, but I bared them anyway. "I'm not stopping you from selling a single car, Connor. I'm just doing my job, and now, my job means making sure Titan inventory goes where it's valued, where it was earned. You wanted a new year, right? This is how business is done now." He cussed quiet at first, then louder, the mask gone, all the calculations stripped away, just a scared, furious little brother finally realizing the storm he'd called down with his own hands. The call ended. I stared at my reflection in the smudged window, red eye, the line from too many sleepless nights carved deep into my face. My hands still shook, scared of what I'd unleashed, furious for what I'd been forced to do, but underneath it a bedrock of grim determination. For the first time since Dad left, I was in control. And I wasn't about to let Connor, my own blood or not, rip apart what we'd built just to prove a point. Let him learn what hunger feels like. Let him watch those empty lots gather dust, while the world saw what a Callahan could really do when he was finally set free. I was halfway through my second coffee, barely lukewarm, anchor heavy on my tongue when my phone crackled with a cold that spun my spine ties. "Dad," the screen read, the word suddenly foreign, heavy with dread. I almost didn't answer. But I did. Years of instinct overrode everything. "Ben," he barked, no greeting, just the gale force snap from my childhood. "What the hell's going on? Your brother just called, saying you're sabotaging the dealership, locking out our suppliers. He's talking crazy, and Titan's rep is blowing up my phone, threatening lawsuits if we breach our contract. Christ, I leave for 6 months and you two are ready to torch the whole damn town." I sat there, blind slanting dust motes across the counter, heart stumbling. "Dad, wait, you don't know the half of it. Connor, he's not telling you everything. He was about to gut the place, switch us over to Novacar, just so he could..." He cut me off, voice loaded with that old, familiar disappointment. "I trusted you boys, trusted you to do right by what I built. I didn't spend 30 years busting my back just to see my sons turn on each other like junkyard dogs. You think controlling those deliveries makes you a big man? Feels good, huh? Watch your brother squirm a little." My fingers dug into the Formica, white hot. The words snarled back before I could stop them. "You didn't hear what I heard, Dad. The backroom meetings, the bonus checks, Novacar's not legit. If he signs that contract, Titan will be the ones breathing down all our necks. This isn't just payback, I got proof. Emails, wire receipts, cleared through the office computer. He was done with Callahan Auto the moment you stepped foot in Montana. He was gonna sell you out." The silence stretched thick as engine oil. For a second, I heard nothing but the whistle of Dad's breath, and the faint, desperate hope that maybe, if I said it plain, he'd finally see. There was a shuffle, the phone cradling static. I pictured him at that old oak desk, staring at the fading family photo, the three of us, arms thrown around each other, before the business and bitterness started carving us apart. Finally, he growled, quieter now, but with a tremor that cut deeper than shouting. "Send me everything tonight. I want every scrap of proof. If you're right, we end this your way. But if you're feeding me lies just to get back at your brother, well, Ben, you know that's not a win this family survives." My hand shook as I thumbed through the files of years of loyalty, memories turned into evidence, feeling sick, victorious, hollow. I paused on one last photo, me and Connor, knee-deep in snow, chasing after Dad's old Ford. Pure joy, untouched by resentment. I hit send all, and for the first time, the consequences gaped open before me, a chasm between what I wanted and what was right. The odd cult's word in my gut, protect the family, or protect the truth, even if it shattered us. And in that moment, I realized this revenge wasn't mine anymore. It was bigger, uglier. The fuse was lit, and the explosion about to come would leave no one untouched. Dad came back from Montana looking more tired than I'd ever seen him, boots scuffed, eyes ringed with doubt and something like grief. He didn't waste time with speeches, he just marched into Connor's glass-walled office, slammed my emails on the desk, and looked us both dead in the eye. The air was thick, almost electric, like every stormy Sunday when tempers used to flare. Connor tried to bluff, said the numbers were faked, that I forged it all out of jealousy. But Dad knew. Even before I opened my mouth, he could see it in Connor's rambling, the jitter in his hands. I felt 14 again in that room, waiting for a punishment that meant something, waiting for Dad to choose which son he believed. But this time, Dad put the old loyalty aside. Enough, he said, voice raw. You either stayed and rebuilt what you tried to burn, by my rules and Ben's honest, the way your mother would have wanted till you get bought out, clean and final. I won't have a vulture for a partner. I won't lose both my boys to greed. Connor stared at the desk, eyes hollow. The silence stretched, so much left unsaid between us, years of rivalry, the things you fight about when you're young and stupid but never get over. For a second, I wondered if he'd fight, if he'd spit in our faces and stick around out of spite. But eventually, he nodded once, almost like a kid admitting he cheated at backyard poker. He told Dad he'd take the buyout, and that was that. No apology, not even a glance in my direction. He packed up that afternoon, white shirts and trophy plaques shoved gracelessly into a duffel. I watched through the showroom glass as he peeled out, the sun flashing off his taillights, shrinking into a memory. No last words. No brotherly handshake. Just the end. Dad didn't say anything, just clapped a hand on my shoulder so heavy it nearly buckled me. We both stood there, soaking in the emptiness, the weight of all we nearly lost. I should have felt vindicated or triumphant. This whole thing, after all, had started as a kind of payback. But as the lot grew quiet, I realized revenge was just another flavor of loss. I hadn't won, not really. We just stopped the bleeding before it cost us everything. The months after were hard. Trust, once splinter, doesn't glue itself back together overnight. Dad and I worked side by side, rebuilding one handshake at a time. I took every call myself, remembered birthdays, comfortable changes for old-timers who still miss my mom. Sometimes, I'd see a car with New York plates and feel a cold pang, thinking of Connor somewhere faceless, chasing the next gamble that would never fill him up. Nights blurred into one another. I'd sit alone in Dad's old office, the hum of the neon sign outside beating steady against the window. Sometimes I saw Kid Connor barefoot in the kitchen, begging to come with me to the dealership, promising he'd behave. Was there ever a version of this story where we stuck together? Where he didn't run so far, or I didn't push so hard? In the quiet, I had to reckon with a knot in my chest. I wasn't angry anymore. I just missed my brother. But time rolled on. The business healed, steady as a sunrise. Callahan and Son actually meant something again, not just a punchline. Dad smiled more. Employees stopped looking over their shoulders. Customers could feel the difference, too. It was back in the bones of the place, the sense that they mattered. That we remembered what home felt like. Looking back, I realized I'd changed. I wasn't the angry kid in the shadow anymore. I was the man standing in the light, holding the place together not from spite, but from hope. I learned that trust costs more than any contract, and no amount of revenge could ever buy back what family is supposed to mean. Now, every time I lock up at night, keys burning warm in my palm, I catch my reflection in the glass grey at the temples, tired but proud. Maybe Connor finds his own peace somewhere. Maybe not. All I know is I chose the honest road. I get to look my dad in the eye every morning and know that, in the end, we kept our promise. And that means more than any victory ever could. Looking back, I finally understood legacies aren't built on clever schemes, power plays, or payback strikes made in the dark. They're made in the quiet moments, choosing to do the right thing even when no one's watching, especially when it's easier to burn it all down. Building something real takes patience and pain, forgiveness where it feels impossible, and faith that honesty outlasts every shortcut. I could have used my power to crush my brother outright, but it would have left nothing worth saving behind. It took losing almost everything to see that. Standing in that empty showroom, the echo of my dad's words still hanging in the air, I realized it was never about winning. It was about holding on to who we really are, no matter how much it hurts. In the end, family and honor are the only things you get to keep. That's the promise I keep to myself each night as I turn off the lights, knowing I chose the honest road and I'd do it again.